Imani Blake worked 3 jobs just to keep her family afloat, cleaning houses by day and working at a nursing home by night, invisible to the wealthy world she served. When exhaustion finally caught up with her and she fell asleep on billionaire CEO Dominic Ray's pristine couch, she expected to be fired from the best-paying job she had. Instead, the man known as the Ice King for his cold demeanor saw something in her vulnerability that awakened his own humanity. What began as small acts of kindness, a coffee maker, soft blankets, understanding notes, blossomed into a love that would transform both their worlds. Before we start this story, comment below from where you're watching us. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse apartment as Imani Blake moved quietly from room to room. Her uniform, a simple grey dress with a white collar, was already damp with sweat as she polished the last of the marble countertops in the kitchen. The clock on the wall showed 2:30 p.m. She'd been cleaning for 6 hours straight, and this was only her second job of the day. At 25, Imani was already carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. Her mother's medical bills kept piling up, and her younger cousin Jade needed textbooks for college. 3 jobs barely kept them afloat, but Imani never complained. Not out loud anyway. This particular cleaning job paid better than most. The penthouse belonged to Dominic Ray, the 31-year-old CEO of Ray International Architecture. She'd never actually met him in the 6 months she'd been cleaning his home. That was the arrangement. He was always gone by the time she arrived, and she was always gone before he returned. His assistant had hired her, given her a key and a list of very specific instructions. "Mr. Ray values his privacy and his order," the tight-lipped woman had said. "Everything has its place. Nothing should be moved unless it's being cleaned, and absolutely no personal touches." Imani understood rules. Her whole life was built around them. Be invisible, work harder, never ask for help, sleep less, do more. She glanced at her phone and saw 3 missed calls from the nursing home where her mother stayed. Her heart raced as she quickly dialed back. "Ms. Blake, it's Nurse Wilson. Your mother had a difficult morning, but she's stable now. The doctor adjusted her medication, but he wants to run some additional tests. They won't be covered by insurance." Imani closed her eyes, leaning against the counter she'd just polished. "How much?" "Around $2,000. "I'll figure it out," she said, knowing she had exactly $430 in her bank account. "Can I come see her tonight?" "Of course. She's been asking for you." After hanging up, Imani felt the exhaustion hit her like a physical blow. She still had to finish this apartment, then work an 8-hour night shift at the nursing home. When would she sleep? She couldn't remember the last time she'd gotten more than 4 hours. She looked around the immaculate penthouse, with its pristine white furniture, glass tables, and expensive art. The place was cold and perfect, like a museum, not a home. She wondered what kind of man lived this way. Dominic Ray's life was a mystery to her. She knew what the gossip sites said, that he was brilliant, ruthless, and intensely private. No serious relationships, no scandals, just work and more work. The tabloids called him the Ice King because of his cold demeanor and his habit of firing anyone who didn't meet his exacting standards. Imani finished the last of her cleaning tasks, but as she gathered her supplies, her vision blurred. The lack of sleep and food was catching up with her. She sat down on the edge of the white Italian leather couch, just for a moment, just to catch her breath. 5 minutes, she whispered to herself. Just 5 minutes, then I'll go. The softness of the couch enveloped her as she leaned back. She'd never actually sat on any of the furniture before. It felt like a cloud. Her eyelids grew heavy. Before she knew it, she was asleep. 2 hours later, rain pounded against the windows of the penthouse as Dominic Ray entered his home. He'd left an important meeting early, irritated by the incompetence of his new project managers. All he wanted was a hot shower and silence. He dropped his keys on the marble counter and loosened his tie as he walked toward his bedroom. He didn't notice anything amiss until he emerged from his shower 20 minutes later. With a towel wrapped around his waist, water still dripping from his dark hair, he stepped into his living room and froze. There was a woman asleep on his couch, the cleaning woman. For a moment, he simply stared. In all his years of hiring staff, nothing like this had ever happened. His first instinct was anger. This was a violation of the rules of his privacy. But something stopped him from immediately waking her. She was curled on her side, one hand tucked under her cheek. There were dark circles under her eyes, and even in sleep, her brow was furrowed, as if she couldn't escape her worries even in dreams. Her cleaning supplies were neatly gathered at her feet. She wasn't lounging, she had simply collapsed. Dominic approached quietly, noticing the way her uniform was worn at the edges, how thin her wrists were, how her breathing seemed labored even in sleep. What kind of life are you living? He wondered, surprising himself with the thought. Just then, her eyes fluttered open. For a brief moment she looked peaceful, disoriented, and then pure panic flooded her face as she bolted upright. "Mr. Ray, I'm so sorry, I didn't—" Her words tumbled out as she scrambled to stand, gathering her things with trembling hands. "This has never happened before. I just sat down for a moment. I didn't mean to—" "You're still here," he said quietly, more an observation than an accusation. Imani couldn't look at him, this powerful man standing in front of her with just a towel, water still glistening on his chest. She was mortified, certain she was about to lose this job. "I'll go right now." "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "Please don't contact the agency. I need this job. It won't happen again." Dominic watched her closely, noticing how she bit her lip to stop it from trembling, how she avoided his eyes, the way her hands shook as she grabbed her cleaning caddy. "Sit back down," he said, his voice softer than he intended. She froze, clutching her supplies to her chest. "Sit," he repeated. "You looked peaceful." Imani didn't sit. She couldn't. All she could think about was that she'd broken the rules, crossed a line, and rules were all that kept her world from falling apart. "I have to go," she whispered, edging toward the door. "I have another job to get to." Dominic didn't try to stop her as she rushed out, the door closing quietly behind her. He stood in his living room, water dripping onto his expensive hardwood floors, feeling strangely unsettled. For the first time in years, his perfect ordered penthouse felt empty rather than peaceful. The next morning, Dominic sat at his kitchen counter, a cup of coffee in hand, unable to shake the image of the exhausted woman asleep on his couch. He'd learned her name from the agency, Imani Blake, 25 years old. Impeccable references. Never a complaint. He opened his laptop and did something he'd never done before. He looked up one of his employees. A quick search told him more than he expected. Local news articles from 3 years ago showed Imani at a hospital, standing beside an older woman who had been injured in a car accident. Her mother. There was a fundraiser page for medical bills that had never reached its goal. Dominic closed his laptop, a strange feeling in his chest. He grabbed a notepad and pen, hesitated, then began to write. When Imani arrived at the penthouse the following day, her heart was pounding. She was certain she'd find a termination notice. Instead, on the couch where she'd fallen asleep, there was a folded piece of paper. With shaking hands, she opened it. "If you're ever that tired again, you don't have to run. No one should work themselves into the floor just to be forgotten." It was signed simply, Dr. Imani read the note 3 times, unable to believe what she was seeing. Not anger, not dismissal, but understanding. She slipped the note into her pocket and began her work, wondering what kind of man Dominic Ray really was behind his cold reputation, and why her heart wouldn't stop racing at the thought of seeing him again. The note from Dominic burned in Imani's pocket as she rode the bus to the nursing home. Every few minutes her fingers would touch the folded paper, making sure it was still there, that she hadn't imagined it. The nursing home was busy when she arrived. Her mother, Eleanor Blake, was sitting in a wheelchair by the window, looking out at the small garden. "There's my baby girl," Eleanor said, her voice weak but her smile strong. "You look tired, honey." Imani kissed her mother's cheek. "I'm fine, Mama. How are you feeling today?" "Oh, you know me. Too stubborn to let a little pain slow me down." Eleanor patted Imani's hand. "But what about you? You're working too hard." "I'm doing what needs to be done," Imani said firmly. "And I have good news. I think I can get the money for those tests the doctor wants to run." What she didn't say was that she'd have to pick up extra shifts at the diner, her 3rd job, or that she'd have to sell the gold necklace her father had given her before he died. Some burdens weren't meant to be shared. "Imani, you listen to me," Eleanor said, suddenly serious. "You're young. You should be living your life, not spending all your time working and worrying about me." "Mama, please." "We've talked about this. I know. But a mother worries." Eleanor squeezed her daughter's hand. "You're so much like your father, always taking care of everyone else, never thinking about yourself." Imani stayed until visiting hours ended, then changed into her nursing aide uniform for her night shift. By the time she finally got home to the small apartment she shared with her cousin Jade, it was past 2 a.m. Jade was still up, studying at the kitchen table. At 19, she was in her 2nd year of college, determined to become a doctor someday. "You should be sleeping," Imani said, dropping her bag on a chair. "Exam tomorrow," Jade replied, not looking up from her textbook. "There's leftover pasta in the fridge if you're hungry." Imani heated up the food and sat across from her cousin. "How's school going?" "Good, hard, expensive." Jade finally looked up, her young face serious. "The tuition for next semester went up again." Imani's heart sank, but she kept her voice steady. "We'll figure it out, we always do." Later, lying in bed, Imani took out Dominic's note and read it again in the dim light. No one should work themselves into the floor just to be forgotten. The words made her throat tight. How long had it been since anyone had seen her, really seen her, and the weight she carried? The next day, Imani arrived at Dominic's penthouse at her usual time. Everything looked the same, immaculate, cold, perfect. But as she began her cleaning routine, she noticed something different near the kitchen. A small coffee maker had been placed on the counter, with a note beside it. "For long days. Help yourself." Simple words, but they made Imani stop and stare. Was this a trap? Some kind of test? She'd never taken so much as a glass of water during her cleaning jobs, but as she worked through the apartment, dusting and polishing, the smell of fresh coffee was too tempting to resist. She finally poured herself a cup, feeling like she was breaking some unspoken rule. The coffee was expensive, much better than the instant stuff she bought on sale. She savored every sip as she continued working. When she finished cleaning the living room, she noticed something else. On the couch where she'd fallen asleep, there was now a small, soft throw blanket. It hadn't been there before. It looked out of place among the stark, modern decor. Imani touched it hesitantly. It was cashmere, buttery soft against her fingers. She quickly pulled her hand away, unsure what to make of these changes. For the next week, Imani continued to find small, unexpected comforts around the apartment. A pair of soft slippers near the couch, a bowl of fresh fruit on the counter with another note. Long days need fuel. A radio that hadn't been there before, tuned to a station playing soft jazz. Never anything too personal or intrusive, just small acknowledgements that she existed. That her comfort mattered. She never saw Dominic, but his presence was everywhere. She began to wonder what he was like beyond the cold reputation that followed him. The man who left these thoughtful items seemed nothing like the Ice King the tabloids described. Meanwhile, at home, pressures were mounting. Jade's tuition bill arrived larger than expected. The nursing home called about her mother's declining health. The diner cut back her hours. Each day felt like walking up a mountain that kept getting steeper. One particularly difficult morning, after being up all night with her mother at the emergency room, Imani arrived at the penthouse, barely able to keep her eyes open. As she unlocked the door, she noticed an envelope taped to it. Inside was a single sheet of expensive stationery. "You look like someone the world forgot to be gentle with. I haven't stopped thinking about that." The words blurred as tears filled her eyes. She quickly wiped them away, embarrassed even though no one was there to see. This was getting too complicated, too personal. She was the maid. He was her employer. There were boundaries that shouldn't be crossed. And yet, for the first time in years, someone was seeing her struggle. Not just the work she did, but the person behind it. She placed the note with the others she'd kept in her pocket and began her cleaning routine. But today, her mind wasn't on the tasks at hand. It was on the man who had written those words, a man she'd met only once in the most embarrassing moment of her professional life. As she finished cleaning the kitchen, the house phone rang. She jumped, startled by the sound. It rang 3 times before she hesitantly answered. "Hello? Miss Blake." It was Dominic's voice, deep and calm. "I thought you might be there." Imani's heart raced. "Mr. Ray, I'm sorry for answering your phone." "Don't apologize," he cut in. "I called hoping you would answer." There was a pause, heavy with unspoken words. "I wanted to make sure the coffee maker is working properly," he said finally, "and to ask if there's anything else you might need." Imani gripped the phone tighter. "The coffee maker is fine, thank you. It's very kind of you." Another pause. "Kindness has nothing to do with it," Dominic said, his voice lower now. "It's basic respect, something you seem to receive too little of." Imani didn't know how to respond to that. No one in her position expected respect. They expected to be invisible. "I should go," she said quickly. "I have work to finish." "Of course. Good day, Ms. Blake." She hung up the phone, her hands trembling slightly. For the next few days, Imani found herself looking forward to going to the penthouse. Each day brought a new, small comfort, a padded mat in front of the sink where she spent long minutes washing dishes, a portable phone charger, a small box of expensive teas. She began leaving her own notes. Simple thank yous at first, then gradually more. "The tea helped my sore throat. Thank you. The blanket came in handy during my break. It's getting colder. I've never had coffee this good before. One day she arrived to find a letter, longer than the notes he'd left before, placed on the kitchen counter. Imani, I realize our arrangement is unusual. I've always kept my professional and personal lives completely separate. I've built walls that no one has been able to breach. But that day when I found you asleep on my couch, something changed. For the first time in years, this place felt like more than just a showcase of success. It felt human. You brought humanity into these cold rooms, and I find myself grateful for that. I would like to meet you properly, not as employer and employee, but as two people. If you're willing, I'll be home this Thursday at 3 p.m. Imani read the letter 3 times, her heart pounding. This was crossing every line. She should refuse. She should quit. This job wasn't worth the complication. But as she folded the letter and slipped it into her pocket with the others, she knew she wouldn't quit. Because for the first time in years, someone was offering her not charity, not pity, but connection. Real, human connection. That night when she visited her mother, Eleanor noticed the change immediately. "You're smiling," she said, studying Imani's face. "I haven't seen that in a while." Imani sat on the edge of her mother's bed. "Mama, can I ask you something? Is it wrong to want something for yourself even when there are so many other things to worry about?" Eleanor reached out to touch her daughter's cheek. "Oh, my sweet girl. It's not just not wrong. It's necessary. You can't pour from an empty cup, baby. Your father and I always wanted you to have joy, not just responsibility." Imani thought about those words as she rode the bus home. Joy had seemed like a luxury she couldn't afford, not with medical bills and tuition payments and rent always looming. But maybe her mother was right. Maybe she deserved a moment of connection, a breath of something different. By Thursday, Imani had changed her mind a dozen times. She should go. She shouldn't go. It was inappropriate. It was just a conversation. Nothing would come of it. Everything could change. In the end, she arrived at the penthouse at her usual time, determined to clean quickly and be gone before 3 p.m. She would leave a note explaining that it wasn't a good idea for them to meet. But as she moved through the rooms, polishing and dusting, she found herself working more slowly than usual. And when the clock showed 2:55 p.m., she was still there, her heart pounding as she heard the key turn in the lock. Dominic Ray stepped into his penthouse, wearing a dark suit that fit his tall frame perfectly. He stopped when he saw her standing in the living room, still in her grey uniform, her cleaning supplies beside her. "You stayed," he said simply, the hint of a smile touching his lips. Imani nodded, too nervous to speak. Dominic set down his briefcase and removed his suit jacket, hanging it carefully over the back of a chair. "Would you like some tea or coffee?" he asked, moving toward the kitchen. "Tea would be nice," Imani said, finding her voice at last. She watched as Dominic Ray, one of the most powerful men in the city, made tea for his cleaning lady. His movements were precise, efficient. Nothing wasted, nothing rushed. "Please, sit," he said, gesturing to the couch as he brought 2 cups to the coffee table. Imani sat stiffly on the edge of the couch, feeling out of place despite having cleaned this room hundreds of times. Dominic sat across from her, his dark eyes studying her face. "I want to apologize," he said. Imani looked up, surprised. "For what?" "For never acknowledging your presence until now, for treating you as invisible, just like everyone else does." "It's just a job, Mr. Ray. I don't expect—" "Dominic," he interrupted. "Please call me Dominic." Imani nodded, her fingers wrapped tightly around the warm teacup. "Dominic," she repeated softly. "And you're wrong," he continued. "It's not just a job. Work has dignity. The people who do it have dignity. I forgot that for a long time." Something in his words made Imani's throat tighten. How long had she felt like just a pair of hands, moving through people's lives, cleaning up their messes, never being seen? "Why did you leave those things for me?" she asked finally. Dominic looked down at his cup for a moment before answering. "Because when I saw you that day, sleeping from exhaustion, I recognized something in you. The same drive that pushes me, the same loneliness." He looked up, his eyes meeting hers. "But you carry it with more grace than I ever have." Imani didn't know what to say to that. No one had ever spoken to her this way before. "Tell me about yourself," Dominic said. "Not what you do, who you are." And for the first time in years, Imani found herself talking about more than just survival. She told him about her mother's accident, about her cousin's dreams of becoming a doctor, about her own abandoned hope of going to college someday. Dominic listened, really listened, in a way that made Imani feel like every word mattered. And when she finally fell silent, he simply said, "Thank you for staying today." As Imani left the penthouse an hour later, she felt lighter somehow, as if sharing even a small part of her burden had made it easier to carry. She didn't know what would happen next or if anything would happen at all, but for the first time in years, she felt seen, not as a maid, not as a caretaker, but as Imani, just Imani. The days that followed their first real conversation changed everything. Imani continued to clean Dominic's penthouse 3 times a week, but now he arranged his schedule to be home for at least an hour during her visits. They would have tea, sometimes lunch, and talk, just talk, about books they'd read, about Dominic's latest building project in Dubai, about Imani's mother and her slow recovery, simple conversations that made the cold penthouse feel warmer somehow. "You never talk about your family," Imani said one afternoon as they sat on the balcony watching the city spread out beneath them. Dominic's face hardened slightly. "There's not much to tell. My parents died when I was in college. Car accident. I have a younger sister, but we're not close." "I'm sorry," Imani said, understanding loss all too well. Her father's death from cancer 10 years ago still felt like an open wound sometimes. "Don't be. We weren't close even before they died." Dominic looked out at the skyline. "My father built the company from nothing. He expected perfection. Anything less was failure." "Sounds familiar," Imani said with a small smile. "My father worked 2 jobs his whole life. He used to say, 'No one will give you anything in this world. You have to earn every bit of respect.'" Dominic turned to look at her. He was right, but there's a difference between earning respect and forgetting to live. The words hit close to home. When was the last time Imani had done anything just for herself? Gone to a movie? Had dinner with friends? Those luxuries had disappeared when her mother got sick. As if reading her thoughts, Dominic said, "There's a gallery opening tomorrow night. One of my firm's buildings is being featured. Would you come with me?" Imani's heart raced. "As your friend," Dominic finished for her. "As my friend who might enjoy an evening out." Friend. The word felt both safe and disappointing somehow. "I don't have anything to wear to something like that," she said honestly. "That's easily solved." The next day, a large box was delivered to Imani's apartment. Inside was a simple but elegant black dress, classic and understated, with a note, "No pressure, just an option if you decide to come." Jade whistled when she saw the dress. "Who sent you that?" "Just someone I know," Imani said, not ready to explain Dominic to anyone yet. Whatever was happening between them felt too fragile, too new. That evening, as Imani slipped on the dress, she barely recognized herself in the mirror. When was the last time she'd worn anything but uniforms and worn jeans? The woman looking back at her seemed like a stranger, someone who might belong in Dominic's world if only for a night. Dominic sent a car to pick her up. When she arrived at the gallery, he was waiting outside, tall and imposing in his dark suit, but his eyes softened when he saw her. "You came," he said simply, offering his arm. "I came," she echoed, taking it hesitantly. The gallery was crowded with the kind of people Imani only ever saw from a distance. Wealthy, polished, confident. She felt out of place until Dominic leaned down and whispered, "Half the people here are counting the minutes until they can leave and take off their uncomfortable shoes." The comment made her laugh, easing some of her tension. As Dominic guided her through the exhibit, introducing her simply as "my friend Imani," she began to relax. He knew everyone, was respected by everyone, but seemed genuinely interested only in her reactions to the stunning architectural photographs on display. "This is your building?" she asked, stopping in front of a massive photo of a sleek glass tower that seemed to touch the clouds. "My firm's design, yes," he said. "It took 3 years to complete." "It's beautiful," she said honestly, like it's reaching for something more. Dominic looked at her with surprise. "That's exactly what I was trying to capture. Most people just see glass and steel." A tall, elegant woman approached them, her red lips curved in a practiced smile. "Dominic, darling, I thought you'd never leave your office long enough to attend one of these things." "Cynthia," Dominic nodded coolly, "I wouldn't miss seeing the Meridian Tower featured." The woman's eyes flicked to Imani, assessing and dismissive in a single glance. "And who's your friend?" "This is Imani Blake," Dominic said, his voice taking on an edge. "Imani, this is Cynthia Wells, a board member at the firm." "How lovely," Cynthia said without warmth. "And what do you do, dear?" Before Imani could answer, Dominic cut in. "Imani is studying to be an architect. She has a remarkable eye for design." The lie slid so smoothly from his lips that Imani almost believed it herself. She shot him a questioning look, but he gave a slight shake of his head. "How Interesting, Cynthia said, clearly not interested at all. Dominic, we simply must discuss the Singapore project before you disappear again. You've been so hard to reach lately. Another time, Cynthia, Dominic said firmly. I'm here with Imani tonight. As Cynthia walked away, her back stiff with disapproval, Imani turned to Dominic. Why did you lie about me? I didn't lie about what matters, he said quietly. You do have a remarkable eye, the rest is just details. Details like the fact that I clean your house for a living? Imani said, suddenly angry. Are you ashamed of that? Because I'm not. Dominic's expression darkened. That's not what I meant. I just didn't want her to know the truth, that you're spending time with the help. Imani felt hot tears threatening and blinked them back furiously. She would not cry here in front of these people. I should go. Imani, wait. But she was already moving toward the exit, weaving through the crowd, ignoring the curious glances. Outside, the cool night air hit her face, and she gulped it in, trying to steady herself. What had she been thinking? That she could step into Dominic's world so easily, that the distance between them wasn't as vast as it really was. She had just hailed a taxi when Dominic appeared beside her. Please don't leave, he said, his voice low and urgent. Not like this. I don't belong here, Dominic, she said tiredly. We both know that. That's not true. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration she'd never seen from him before. I didn't lie to protect myself. I lied to protect you from people like Cynthia who only see titles, not people. I don't need protection, Imani said. I need honesty. Dominic looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. You're right. I'm sorry. The simple apology surprised her. Men like Dominic Ray didn't apologize to women like her. Ever. Let me take you home, he said. Please. After a moment's hesitation, she nodded. They rode in silence in his sleek car, the city lights sliding past the windows. When they reached her apartment building, so different from his luxury penthouse, Imani expected him to simply let her out. Instead, he turned off the engine. I'd like to explain, he said. May I come up? Imani hesitated. Her apartment was small, shabby compared to what he was used to. But the look in his eyes, a rare vulnerability, made her nod. It's not much, she warned, as she led him up 3 flights of stairs. I don't care about that, he said simply. Her apartment was clean, but cramped. The furniture was mismatched, the walls needed paint, and the kitchen was barely big enough for one person. But there were touches of home everywhere. Family photos, a colorful throw on the worn couch, a vase of fresh flowers on the small dining table. Jade was out studying at the library, so they had the place to themselves. Imani put on a kettle for tea, acutely aware of Dominic taking in her humble home. It's not a penthouse, she said defensively. No, he agreed, looking at a photo of her with her mother and cousin. It's a home. My place is just a space. The simple admission disarmed her. She brought 2 mugs of tea to the small living room, sitting across from him. I'm sorry about tonight, Dominic said, cradling the mug in his large hands. I handled it badly. The truth is, I've spent my whole life in a world where people are valued for what they have, not who they are. When Cynthia looked at you that way, he paused, his jaw tightening. I wanted to protect you from that judgment, but I was wrong to lie. Imani sipped her tea, studying him over the rim of her mug. Have you ever dated someone who wasn't from your world? Someone without money or connections? Dominic looked startled by the direct question. No, he admitted, but not because I didn't want to. It's just, my life has been all about the firm since my parents died. I inherited a company in trouble and spent every waking hour saving it, at the expense of everything else. Yes, he set down his mug. Until recently, I thought that was enough. Success, achievement. Then I found you asleep on my couch, and suddenly all those things seemed empty. The honesty in his voice made Imani's heart beat faster. Dominic, what are we doing? Where is this going? Because our worlds are very different. Do they have to be? He asked, leaning forward. Yes, I have money. Yes, I have a position in society that comes with certain expectations, but none of that matters when I'm with you. For the first time in years, I feel like a person, not a title. And what happens when the novelty wears off? When you realize that my life is an endless cycle of work and worry that will never change? Is that what you think this is? Novelty? Dominic's voice was hurt. Imani, I've had every advantage in life except one. Someone who sees me for who I am, not what I can give them. You're the only person who's ever done that. Imani wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that whatever was growing between them could survive the gulf that separated their lives. But experience had taught her that hope was a luxury she couldn't afford. I don't know if I can do this, she said honestly. I have responsibilities. My mother, Jade, they depend on me. I'm not asking you to give up anything, Dominic said, reaching across to take her hand. I'm asking for a chance to be part of your life, however that looks. His hand was warm around hers, steady and strong. For a moment, Imani let herself imagine what it would be like to share her burdens, to not be alone in the constant struggle. One step at a time, she said finally. That's all I can promise. Dominic smiled, a rare, genuine smile that transformed his serious face. That's all I'm asking for. As he left that night, Imani felt both terrified and exhilarated. Whatever was happening between them was real, scary and complicated, and real. The next day, when she arrived at the penthouse to clean, there was a letter waiting for her on the kitchen counter. Imani, last night made me realize something important. I've been living in a sterile, empty space that reflects how empty my life has been. You've brought warmth and humanity into these cold rooms. But more than that, you've shown me what a real home feels like. Your apartment isn't grand or expensive, but it's filled with love and life. I want that. With you. Take all the time you need. I'll be here. Dominic. Imani pressed the letter to her chest, torn between joy and fear. Could she really let herself believe in this? In him. That evening, she visited her mother at the nursing home and found her sitting up in bed, looking better than she had in weeks. The doctor says I'm improving, Eleanor said, squeezing Imani's hand. The new medication is working. That's wonderful, Mama, Imani said, relief washing over her. One worry eased, at least for now. There's something different about you, Eleanor observed, studying her daughter's face. You're glowing. Is there someone new in your life? Imani hesitated, then nodded. Maybe. It's complicated. Love always is, Eleanor said with a smile. Tell me about him. So Imani did, sharing the strange, unexpected story of finding connection in the most unlikely place. As she talked, she realized just how much Dominic had come to mean to her in such a short time. He sounds like a good man, Eleanor said when Imani finished. Different from his world, just like your father was different from his. What do you mean? Your father came from money, you know. His family disowned him when he married me, a waitress with no education. But he never regretted it, not for a second. Eleanor's eyes grew distant with memory. He chose love over everything else. It wasn't always easy, but it was real. Imani stared at her mother in shock. Why have you never told me this before? Because it didn't matter, Eleanor said simply. What mattered was the life we built, not the one he left behind. Your father taught me that people are more than their circumstances, more than their bank accounts. She squeezed Imani's hand. Don't be afraid of this, baby. Real connection is too rare to push away because you're scared. On the bus ride home, Imani thought about her mother's words and the revelation about her father. Had she been judging Dominic for his wealth just as surely as Cynthia had judged her for her lack of it? When she reached her apartment, she found a small package outside her door. Inside was a key and another note. No pressure, just an option when you're ready. My door is always open to you, not as my employee, but as the woman who made this cold place feel like home for the first time. Imani held the key tightly in her hand, feeling its weight, its possibility. One step at a time, she had said. Maybe this was the next step. For the next month, Imani and Dominic's relationship continued to grow. She kept her job as his cleaning lady, but their time together had nothing to do with that arrangement anymore. They shared dinners in his penthouse, quiet conversations about everything and nothing, and gradually Imani began to let down the walls she'd built around her heart. One evening, as they sat on his balcony watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, Dominic took her hand. I want to ask you something, he said, his voice serious. Imani felt her heart skip. What is it? Would you let me help with your mother's medical bills? The question was like a bucket of cold water. Imani pulled her hand away. Is that what this has been about? You feeling sorry for me? No, Dominic said quickly. That's not it at all. Then what? Because I didn't tell you about my problems, so you could solve them, Dominic. I'm not a charity case. Dominic ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident on his face. That's not how I see you. And you know it. I care about you, about your family. Is it so wrong to want to help? It is when it makes me feel like this is all unequal, Imani said, standing up, like I'm taking and you're giving. Relationships aren't balance sheets, Imani, Dominic said, rising to face her. You've given me more than you know. For years I've been surrounded by people who only see what I can do for them. My money, my connections, my power. You're the only person who's ever seen past all that. And what happens when the scales tip too far? When I feel like I can never repay you. Imani's voice broke slightly. I can't live like that, Dominic. Always feeling like I owe you. Dominic stepped closer, taking her face gently in his hands. Is that what you think? That I keep score? His eyes searched hers. Imani, what I feel for you has nothing to do with money or status or any of that. I love you. The words hung in the air between them. Imani stared at him, her heart racing. He loved her. This powerful, complicated man loved her. I don't expect you to say it back, Dominic continued when she remained silent. I just need you to know, this isn't charity or pity, it's love. And love means wanting to share your burdens, not because you can't carry them, but because you shouldn't have to carry them alone. Tears filled Imani's eyes. How long had she been doing just that? Carrying everything alone, never letting anyone help, never trusting anyone enough to lean on them even a little. I'm scared, she whispered. Of what? Of losing myself, of becoming dependent, of what happens if this doesn't work out. Dominic wiped away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. I'm scared too. I've never felt this way about anyone, but I think that's how you know it's real, when it matters enough to be scary. Imani took a deep breath. I need time to think. Take all the time you need, Dominic said, stepping back to give her space. I'm not going anywhere. That night, Imani couldn't sleep. Dominic's words kept replaying in her mind. I love you. 3 simple words that changed everything. The next morning, she visited her mother at the nursing home, her mind still churning with thoughts of Dominic. You look troubled, Eleanor said, as soon as Imani walked in. What's wrong, baby? Imani sat on the edge of the bed, taking her mother's frail hand. Dominic told me he loves me, and he wants to help with your medical bills. And that's a problem because I don't want to be with him for his money. I don't want anyone to think that, especially not him. Eleanor squeezed her daughter's hand. Imani, listen to me. Pride is a good thing. It's gotten you through some hard times. But sometimes pride can stand in the way of happiness. It's not just pride, Mama, it's fear, Eleanor finished for her. Fear that if you let him in, if you accept his help, you'll lose control, that you'll be vulnerable. Imani nodded, tears filling her eyes. Her mother knew her too well. Let me tell you something about your father, Eleanor said, her voice growing stronger. When his family cut him off for marrying me, we struggled, really struggled. I wanted to leave him, to save him from that life. But he said something I never forgot. Love isn't about what's easy. It's about what's worth fighting for. She looked directly into Imani's eyes. Is Dominic worth fighting for? Not his money, not what he can do for you, but him, the man himself. Imani thought about Dominic, his quiet strength, his unexpected kindness, the way he looked at her like she was the most interesting person in the room, how he'd seen her exhaustion that first day and responded not with anger, but with understanding. Yes, she said softly, he is. Then don't let fear stop you. Life is too short for that, baby, I should know. After leaving the nursing home, Imani made a decision. She took out her phone and called Dominic. Can we talk? She asked when he answered. There's something I need to say to you. Of course, he said. I'm at the office, but I can meet you anywhere. No, Imani said, suddenly certain. I'll come to you. Dominic's office was in a gleaming skyscraper downtown, the kind of place Imani had only ever entered as part of the cleaning staff. But today, she walked through the imposing glass doors as herself, just Imani, in a simple dress and her best shoes, her head held high. At the reception desk, a polished young woman looked up. Can I help you? I'm here to see Dominic Ray, Imani said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. The receptionist's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose slightly. Do you have an appointment? No, but he's expecting me. My name is Imani Blake. The woman's expression changed subtly. Oh, Ms. Blake. Yes, Mr. Ray mentioned you might stop by. Please go right up. She handed Imani a visitor's badge. Top floor. His assistant will show you in. The elevator ride to the top floor felt endless. When the doors finally opened, Imani stepped into a sleek reception area where another impeccably dressed woman sat behind a desk. Ms. Blake, the woman said with a warm smile. I'm Lisa, Mr. Ray's assistant. He asked me to bring you straight in when you arrived. Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee? No, thank you, Imani said, surprised by the friendliness. Lisa led her to a set of double doors at the end of the hallway. He's just finishing a call, go right in. Dominic's office was exactly what Imani had expected. Large, minimalist, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a stunning view of the city. He was standing behind his desk, phone to his ear, but his face lit up when he saw her. "I need to go," he said into the phone. "We'll continue this later." He hung up without waiting for a response, his attention entirely on Imani. "You came," he said, moving around the desk toward her. "I came," she echoed, remembering their first real conversation in his penthouse. "Is everything okay?" he asked, concern in his eyes. Imani took a deep breath. "I needed to tell you something and it couldn't wait." She paused, gathering her courage. "I love you too." The words seemed to hang in the air between them. Dominic's expression shifted from concern to disbelief to pure joy. "Say that again," he whispered, stepping closer. "I love you," Imani repeated, stronger this time, "and I'm tired of being afraid of what that means." Dominic closed the distance between them, pulling her into his arms. "You have no idea how long I've waited to hear you say that." "I'm still scared," Imani admitted, looking up at him. "There's so much standing between us. Different worlds, different expectations." "None of that matters," Dominic said firmly. "We'll figure it out together, one day at a time." He leaned down and kissed her then, a kiss full of promise and hope, and all the words they hadn't said yet. When they finally pulled apart, Imani rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "There's something else," she said quietly, "about my mother's medical bills. I'll accept your help, but as a loan. I'll pay back every penny." Dominic tilted her chin up to look at him. "How about a compromise? Let me set up a foundation through the company. Your mother can be the first recipient, but it will help others too. You can even run it if you want. Use that sharp mind of yours for something beyond keeping track of everyone else's needs." Imani stared at him in surprise. "You'd do that? In a heartbeat? I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. What's the point of all this?" He gestured around his office. "If I can't use it to make a difference, to help the people I care about." The offer was so thoughtful, so perfectly balanced between helping and respecting her independence, that Imani felt tears sting her eyes. "I think that's the moment I knew for sure," she said softly. "Knew what? That I love you because you see me, really see me, not as someone to rescue, but as a partner." Dominic pulled her close again. "That's exactly what you are, my partner, in everything if you want to be." 3 months later, Imani stood in Dominic's penthouse, no, their penthouse now, looking out at the city lights. So much had changed in such a short time. Her mother had moved to a better facility, one with cutting-edge treatments that were already showing results. Jade had received a full scholarship for the rest of her education, thanks to a foundation Dominic had set up in Eleanor's name, and Imani herself had left her cleaning jobs behind to run that foundation, discovering a talent for organization and leadership she'd never had the chance to explore before. But the biggest change was the penthouse itself. No longer cold and sterile, it had become a true home. Family photos now sat on the shelves, colorful throws softened the sleek furniture, fresh flowers brightened every room. The kitchen actually got used now, not just cleaned. "What are you thinking about?" Dominic asked, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. "About how much has changed," Imani said, leaning back against his chest. "Sometimes I still can't believe it." "Having second thoughts?" he asked, only half joking. Imani turned in his arms to face him. "Not for a second, but sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't fallen asleep on your couch that day." "I'd still be alone," Dominic said simply, "living in a perfect empty space, thinking that was enough. And I'd still be running myself into the ground, thinking I had to do everything alone." Dominic brushed a strand of hair from her face. "I have something for you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Imani's heart skipped a beat. "Dominic." He opened the box to reveal a simple but elegant diamond ring. "I'm not asking you to say yes today. I know we still have things to figure out. But I want you to know that whenever you're ready, I'm ready too." Tears filled Imani's eyes as she looked at the ring. It was beautiful, but what moved her most was the way he was offering it. Not pushing, not demanding, just letting her know where his heart stood. "I don't need time," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "My answer is yes. It's been yes since the day you left that first note." Dominic's face broke into a smile so bright it seemed to light up the room. He slipped the ring onto her finger, then lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her palm. "I promise you this," he said, his voice low and intense. "You will never have to carry your burdens alone again. Whatever comes, we face it together." "Together," Imani repeated, sealing the promise with a kiss. That night, as they lay in bed, Dominic already asleep beside her, Imani thought about the strange, winding path that had led her here. One mistake, falling asleep on a client's couch, should have cost her a job. Instead, It had given her a life she'd never dared to imagine. She thought of her father, who had chosen love over family expectations, of her mother, who had taught her that pride was good but shouldn't stand in the way of happiness, of all the long, exhausting days that had brought her to that moment of complete exhaustion on Dominic's couch. None of it had been easy, but all of it had been worth it. As she drifted off to sleep, her hand securely held in Dominic's even in slumber, Imani felt a peace she hadn't known in years. She had spent so long taking care of everyone else. She'd forgotten what it felt like to be cared for, to be seen, to be loved not for what she did but for who she was. She wasn't just the maid anymore. She wasn't just the caretaker, the responsible one, the one who made sure everyone else was okay. She was Imani, and she was home. In the morning, she would wake up beside the man who had seen her at her most vulnerable and found strength there, not weakness. The man who had written her that first note, "No one should work themselves into the floor just to be forgotten." Dominic had remembered her, had seen her, had loved her, and that made all the difference in the world.